My name's Karina Loth. I'm here from Unbounded with Martin Palethorpe, and we thought we would put together a resource on wisdom. And Martin, perhaps you could start by explaining why you thought this would be a really fabulous topic to explore together here.
So it dawns on me that the only really important thing when leading a company, growing a company, leading it, um, but really on all aspects of life is how wise are we being?
Mm.
How wise are we in each of the decisions that we make, the choices we make in how we lead the company, the strategies we choose, um, yeah, every element of running a company and really in leading our entire life is like how wise are we in the choices that we're making? So for
Yeah,
me, it's like the fundamental thing on a journey of personal development and spiritual development is accessing wisdom.
yeah. It really does influence every single decision that we make. Yeah. And if we want to come from a place of individual empowerment and authenticity, wisdom really is key to that. We're
Yeah.
not outsourcing um, decisions to someone else. We're really coming from a place of inner knowing.
Yes, and I think that's the other thing in this world today. It's very easy because the life is so busy and there's so many other influences. And if I'm an entrepreneur growing a company, it's very easy for me to read someone else's book or get someone else's insight.
Yeah.
But actually, what wisdom is about is tuning in. Yes, we can listen to what others have done or where they're going, but really it needs to come from inside. It's like what do I deeply think is the right thing that I should be doing?
Yes, it's all around alignment and knowing what's true for you, and
Yeah.
getting bringing out the best and your uniqueness too, because we're each here with such differing purposes. And I think tapping in and knowing how to access that wisdom within um, is really crucial actually in this day and age. Could you say a little bit more about that and your experience working with entrepreneurs and leaders?
Well, can I just name what I think wisdom is to start off with?
Sure,
Like,
sure. Go.
and then maybe let me link into that as we're going along.
Mhm.
So. Wisdom, I looked up a definition actually that I'm going to read out. Wisdom is the ability to apply knowledge, experience, and insight to make sound judgments and decisions. So it's an ability to apply knowledge, experience, and insight to make sound judgments and decisions. And like, so experience helps, of course. But we can have experience, but if we're caught up in unhelpful thinking around that experience, it doesn't necessarily turn to wisdom.
Mhm.
Um, so this definition I read went on to say wisdom is often considered a virtue, reflecting a deep understanding of life and the ability to navigate challenges with grace and discernment. So I think there needs to be, to really access wisdom, there needs to be a deep understanding of life, deep understanding of how organizations work best.
Mhm.
That helps us then apply wisdom. And the
Mhm.
distinction I think I'm making here is that we can run a company 5 times,
Mhm.
but we can still not be coming from wisdom in the way that we're running it.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so there's a deep tuning into um, a higher quality of thinking.
Yeah, yeah. Because we're always bringing ourselves into these new companies or new environments, and so it can, if we don't have have a greater insight over what's going on, and we're not tapping in, we're just going to repeat the same old mistakes and approach problems
Yes,
or challenges in the same way.
yes. And this depends on the level of our evolution, really, because if we're caught, if I'm thinking of Richard Barrett's model, which is about the 7 levels of consciousness, in the lower levels of consciousness, we're caught up in ego and fear.
Yes.
And so when we're caught up from ego and fear, let's say, let's say we get married. We get married and it doesn't work out and it ends quite badly.
Mhm.
When we're coming from fear or ego, we go, well, I'm not going to do that again.
Yeah, and we shut it down, and that's
Yes,
it.
we
Yeah.
shut down possibility of anything being like what it really could be. And so really that's not wisdom when it's caught up in a conditioned response
Mhm.
that is driven by ego or by fear.
Mhm.
Um, that's one thing that occurs to me. And the same thing in running a company is like, where's the quality of the consciousness that I'm coming from in how I like we saw this in the pandemic actually, like people working from home. And there's some organizations that don't trust people working from home. If we
Mhm.
can't see them, we can't trust them. And
Mhm.
and sometimes them like this is not what I'm sharing here is not for all situations. I'm sure there's some situations that might differ from this, but generally speaking, what I saw is leaders sometimes that wanted to control and they didn't trust. And the question
Yeah.
is that wise? Uh,
Yes.
so the wisdom then explores, well, what impact is that having on staff? What message does it send to them? How do they feel about that? Am I getting the best out of them? How do I get the best out of them? And wisdom is an inquiry over time as to
Mhm.
what's really working well or what's not.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I had a call this morning with someone that wants to do a bit of work, personal work. He's like a senior leader in an organization.
Mhm.
He's not living in a sustainable way. He's burning out. He's burning out because he's got a series of conditioned ways of operating, which is if things are tough, if things are not working well in the business, I need to work harder.
Yes.
And again, is that wisdom? And the invite I'm taking him on is to look and see actually often we're operating from some conditioned ways of thinking that we picked up along the way that actually doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, and on some level we know that, but we're caught in the rational mind trying to work things out from the same level of consciousness that's creating that mess, and therefore something needs to change. And I think what you're saying is that's when it's important to well, I'm guessing slow down and see what else is possible, and that gives space for wisdom and fresh thinking and fresh perspective. Um,
Yes,
come.
really, really great point you make. I think about slowing down, which is like the faster we go, the less opportunity we'd have to be considerate with our thinking
Yeah,
and measured with our thinking.
yeah,
And so one of the big invites for leaders, like a lot of our work at Unbounded is like retreats to slow people down, to stop and go, hang on a second, what am I doing and why? And
yeah,
does this deeply make sense?
yeah. It's like a settling back in, isn't it, and a recalibration, so that the mind is quieter, and there is that knowing that has that ability to come. How do you work with people around slowing down the mind? You have a program around quality of mind, and perhaps you could just speak a little bit more to that.
Um, well, I think there's two answers to that, Karina. One is that, we run retreats where we take people away for a handful of days.
Mhm.
So we're providing the container for them to slow down,
Mhm.
to come out of the hamster wheel, to come out of the fastness, to stop and say, to ask some bigger questions. So we're providing the space that is the container for the deeper reflections.
Mhm.
And when leaders, and in fact all human beings, see the value of that, they start to say, "Oh my goodness, I need some of this in my daily life."
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so I'm a big fan of making sure, like in every day, like the start of the day, like how do I set my day up so that I am maximizing the health of my mind and my body,
Mhm.
so that I'm going to be most wise effectively, so that I'm going to make the best decisions and come from the best energy and be the best leader I can be, which happens when we put slow down practices into daily life.
Yeah. Yeah. And for a leader who has already a busy schedule, are there any sort of practical things that they can do that can, like, small spaces, small pockets, small pauses? What do you say to those leaders who say, well, I haven't got time to take, an hour or even or two out of my day um, at the moment? And what do you say to them when they sort of claim that there's just no time to slow down?
Well, this is like, first of all, is that wise? Is that the truth, or is that part of the paradigm that we're caught up in, that we haven't got time?
So it's a prioritizing. So I can't say the word. It's really, yeah. It's re looking at what's important and where the
Yeah,
most value can be. Yeah. Okay.
yes. And so there's an exploration of what is being the most effective leader I can be, and um, how do I prioritize the health of my mind in order to be the best I can be.
Yeah.
So there's a mindset shift that's certainly required. And there's, I mean, this is the other thing, is like even in small companies where that person is the founder and the owner, but definitely in larger companies, there's many leaders have disempowered themselves because they don't think they can control their own diary.
Mhm.
And so part of this journey to set up a way of working where you can access greater quality thinking and wisdom is to take ownership of your life and your diary and the way that you lead.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
And we're moving, I think we're moving into a period now where like an era where it is about taking, I mean, if we look at all the crises that are going on in the world, like if we look at where we were a couple of decades ago, we gave away our authority. We trusted leadership figures. We did as we were told a lot more, and the power was in the organizations. But we're moving to a stage now where some of the things that have occurred over the last 20, 30 years. So in the UK, for example, we can't trust the health service to look after us as much as we can, as much as we used to. There's waiting lists that are like months and months or years long,
Mhm. Mhm.
which is just an example of what seems to be going on. And in the pandemic, it's like we had to look after ourselves, really, right? Things were at breaking point, and they're inviting us to start to be more self-reliant and take control on how we're living, every aspect of how we're living and leading, to do it in a way that works for us and that makes sense for us.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that at this point, that's my invite to those that are listening, is my invite is to look at your life, like every aspect of it, including your work. Is like look at look at your well-being, look at your balance, look at how you are as a partner, how you are with your kids if you've got kids, um, how you are as a leader,
Mhm.
the strategies of your business,
Mhm.
how you are around getting the best out of people, etc., etc. Your relationship to money and what your needs are is like any aspect of life. There's the opportunity to look at and say, is there wisdom in how I'm leading it?
Mhm.
Or am I caught up in some unhelpful wheel of existence or unhelpful way of thinking?
Mhm. Yeah.
And it's like it's like life is giving us red flags. I mean, the obvious ones are things around health. If your health is not if you know, if you're having sleepless nights, if you've got a rash coming up on your, I don't know, on your fingers, if you've got, like a health issue, if you've got a health issue in your business, like the staff turnover is high, or the engagement scores are quite low,
Yeah.
or you're losing quite a lot of clients at the moment. It's like these are they're red flags to say, hey, hang on a second. They're red flags to help you tune into your wisdom to say, okay, let's just look at these signs here and really ask ourselves some deeper questions.
Yeah. And it may also be a question of just not being able to stop, not being able to slow down, and that in itself suggests that there's a real need for that. Yeah, and all the other aspects that you've mentioned too.
Yeah.
Mm.
And then the meta level wisdom is for each of us to look at what's going on a macro level in the world
Hmm.
and what role is there for me to play for each of us.
Hmm.
And am I leading my company in a way that is supportive of a healthier world,
Yes.
or really ignoring the fact that the world needs our help?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a wider perspective than just our own individual concerns. Yeah. Mm.
Could I just there's one thing coming up for me. I thank you
Yeah.
for providing all this lovely silence to reflect. In Unbounded, we talk about quality of mind, and I love this reflection is like, what's the quality of the thinking that I'm coming from at any point? And there's low quality of thinking, and with low quality of thinking, I can off it pick it up because if I my body might give me indications of low quality thinking is I'm frustrated or I'm angry. So my body might give me a red flag that hey, your thinking's not that high quality at the moment.
Hmm.
And or my language might give it away. There's a chairman that I was dealing with recently who's constantly swearing about the situation he's in. And that to me is an indication of the quality of his thinking is not the healthiest it needs to be to make the wisest of choices.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the higher quality thinking is when we are, it comes back to the space that we've talked about, Karina, a bit before, is like when we are tuning in, when we're quiet inside, there's calmness. It's like the snow globe, shaking the snow globe and then letting the snow globe settle.
Hmm.
So what comes through our mind is higher quality thinking.
Yeah. From what you were saying, something occurs to me, which I'm curious whether you agree with or not, is that when we haven't got the quality of thinking, there's a tendency to blame or look outside and look to fix something on the outside and to hold other things responsible, when it seems to me that if we can quieten down and look within and see what's going on with our thinking, what we're creating from the inside out, that can make a huge difference to how we're showing up and the clarity of the next steps when we take responsibility for for our state of mind. Would you agree with that?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I love it. Yeah. It's all an inner game, really.
Yeah.
And the less we're looking outside and blaming external circumstances for not being able to raise money or for not being able to do this or that, is like the more we're looking inside, um, the more insight we can gain that's helpful to us, and the more we can grow to be able to deal with the outside world.
Yeah. It's back to wisdom again, isn't it, Martin?
Yeah, yeah.
Mm. Yeah, it's a powerful exploration to have. It's helpful in
So
so many.
so if like I'm conscious we probably need to end this now. I'm just thinking of the how to leave it. I'd love to hear from you, Karina, if you have any thoughts. Well, one of my thoughts is to invite people to explore leading a wisdom guided life.
Yeah, yeah. And to get curious about what that might look like and what might need to be changed and different, in order to allow
Yes.
that. It's an allowing as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's taking the hands, the foot off the brake, or rather, yeah, slowing down in some ways. So maybe it's putting the foot on the brake
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah. And and I'm also yes, absolutely. And I'm also going to then end with an invite to anyone listening to this, because this is our passion. This is our passion at Unbounded, is to work with leaders to help them access more wisdom in every element of how they're leading. And so if this has appealed to you as a listener, reach out to us. We would love to explore how we could support you in transforming the way that you think.
Thank you.
Thank you.